Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Your Sense Words. This is a monthly edition where we have conversations, real conversations with amazing individuals in the accounting industry. And today with me, we have Michael Raanan. I hope I pronounced that correctly. He is the founder of BackTaxCentral, and we're yet to have an amazing chat conversation with him. Michael, it's great to have you here.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Rachel.
Amazing, amazing. So, to start with, Michael, do you mind just introducing yourself to our audience?
Yeah, happy to. So I've been in the tax resolution world for about 20 years. First part of it was as a IRS agent, which everyone loves, of course. That was 8 years in the belly of the beast, I like to call it, as a revenue officer. So those are the collectors, and that was out of Los Angeles, California. And after 8 years at the IRS, I left, started my practice, and been handling back tax cases ever since.
Amazing, amazing. So let's take it from the beginning. Let's start from the beginning. Where did you grow up, and how did your early life shape you into the person that you are today?
Yeah, so it's always interesting the path, right? People take because when I was young, I never dreamed about being an IRS agent, right? I don't think anyone does, but I was born in New York and lived there till I was around 9 or 10 years old, and then we moved down to Florida and grew up here in the Sunshine State. And you know what, what I watched, as a young kid was, relatives, right? We have our family members, which is where we see kind of business happen first.
Mm-hmm.
So I would watch different family members, see what everyone's doing, and I always found it very interesting to see, what type of work people are in, and also, how successful they have become in their respective fields. So, I knew from a young age that you needed to have income, right? You needed
Mm-hmm.
to have assets. You needed to somehow break out of the mold in order to make sure you're able, have housing, have
Yeah.
food, right? Just basics. And also, it was kind of clear to me too, if I ever wanted to have kids in the future, that you need to have at least a little bit more of this, this currency called money. And so I became even more observant,
Mm.
and in watching different entrepreneurs, and then also trying to grab books and any information I could to figure out, okay, how are all these people reaching their levels of success,
Yeah.
and I always saw a pattern. I saw a lot of people investing in real estate. It was probably the number one thing I heard growing up is real estate, real estate, real estate.
Mm.
And the second to that was, owning your own business. Whether
Mm.
you were, doing nails, you had a nail salon, or whether it was painting, or whether, paint company, or construction, or demolition, or something. But, it was a common theme as a kid where you see, okay, the business owners are the ones that are seem to be doing better, at
Mm.
least on the surface, and they're the ones that have an opportunity to live a more comfortable life. So, with that, like that was my kind of guiding light. I was always looking to see, okay, what can I get into once I'm done with this whole formula of, going to school, you know?
Mm.
And so, I eventually made my way to college, got
Mhm.
my, degree in business, with a focus on management information systems, which is, information technology.
Yeah.
And the interesting part about that is, today I kind of living that out, if you will. We're going to have, business mixed in with technology, and you mentioned BackTaxCentral earlier. So that's where that comes in. But, it's always been a focus on what needs to be done in order to achieve the outcome that I'm looking for.
Amazing, amazing. But you know how people always say that, oh, they always knew that they're going to study accounting, or some people will say, I wanted to study computer science and I just found myself in accounting for you? What really drew you into the world of accounting? Was there like do you have any mentor that made you say, oh, you know what, yes, this is it, this is what you should do? Or was it like a decision you just woke up one day and be like, oh, you know what, I'm going to do this?
That's a really good question. So I did wake up one day and it was after a big event, here in the States. 9/11 happened and the economy was crushed. Everyone was looking for work. A lot of people were being laid off. And that was around where, when I was graduating from college. And I'm like, this is not good, right? As a new graduate, I need to find some income. And I did find some income. I had some odd jobs. I was working at retail stores. I paid the bills, doing everything that needed to get done, right? Just to make sure that I'm able to cover basics. But at the same time, Rachel, I was going from job fair to job fair. I was sending out hundreds of resumes. I was doing all that stuff, right, very diligently. There was this one, particular job fair I ended up going to, out of all the many. And I was working my way around the perimeter, and then I would hit the inside, right, of the room. And I was going down, one side of this room, and at the very end, I noticed there was a booth with two people standing up wearing navy blue suits, and it said IRS on there, Internal Revenue Service, right? So I'm like, oh, that's interesting. The scary, intimidating agency that no one likes. But eventually, I hit every booth and eventually made my way. And I wasn't going to skip that one, even though maybe my instincts were telling me maybe skip it, right? But I was doing my duty and being diligent, someone who needed a job. And I was chatting with them, and they said that evening at midnight is when these openings are closing. So they finally got a little bit of money on their budget, the IRS, and they were hiring something like 2,000 employees across the country. So they had dozens of locations. They had over 2,000, openings, and this is rare for that agency. So they said midnight. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to follow up on all the leads from this job fair. One of them is the IRS one. So I went on the website that they gave me, and I filled out like a 150 question, questionnaire, and it gives you the results, right? It says like you passed or whatever, you rated, whatever. And then you're able to move on to the next phase. So long story short, I wasn't seeking accounting. I wasn't seeking anything in the tax world necessarily. But, I knew if I end up working here at this, government agency, that I would be getting paid training, and it would be a stepping stone for me to eventually leave and own my own business. So I looked at it as, paid training. And, eventually, obviously, I got through. We had some interviews, they did fingerprinting, background check, all sorts of stuff. And it was a very interesting 8 years, at the IRS. But I'm definitely glad I'm no longer a government employee. I'm glad that I've been a business owner for the last 13 years.
Amazing. So still like backtracking of what you just said now, you started as IRS agent and now the founder of BackTaxCentral, right? What was the transition like? At what point did you like say that, you know what, I'm done. I'm done with this. I need to start my own
Yeah,
thing.
yeah. Well, so even if you're planning on working for yourself, like I was from the very beginning, you still have to have a
Mm-hmm.
certain level of knowledge and competence and understanding of the field that you're going into. Um, so for me, I was, when I got into the IRS, right? You have one whole year of training. You have on the job training, and then in the classroom
Mm-hmm.
training happening simultaneously over those 12 months. So I was like a sponge trying to absorb as much information as possible, trying to understand. And one thing I understood from like the business level is that every year there's millions and millions of taxpayers who owe money to the IRS. This was happening
Mm.
before I came into this, this area, in this field, and this is going to be happening forever. where people file a tax returns and they owe. So this is a repetitive cycle, which means people need constant help and guidance, right?
mm,
And so I was there, and my intention was stay there for 5 years, learn as much as I could, fully understand it, and then transition into helping taxpayers on the other side of the table. And so I was there, ended up being there for 8 years, 3 years longer than I wanted, but eventually ended up leaving. And what's interesting too, Rachel, is that when I was at the IRS, I was helping the taxpayers clear up their IRS issue, right? Helping them make sense of it.
mhm.
Sometimes
Yeah.
they didn't see it that way, when you're an IRS employee. But I was helping them, and I've been doing the same thing on the other side of the table, right? Just education and bringing their issue to a
Mhm.
resolution.
Mm, I love that. I love that. I love that. So now that so now bringing this to how you interact with your clients, right? Um, Tax season deadlines always brings out the tension in people, like brings out the stress in people. For instance, we have the 1050 deadline coming up in a couple of days, right? And so what's your approach to situations like this? How do you balance the weight of that, of those deadlines, with the weight of what your clients face? Are you always like approachable even in serious situation? How do you manage
Yeah,
that?
these deadlines of April 15th, October 15th, right, for the individuals, and then you have the business deadlines also. So
Mhm.
what's unique is that my practice, we don't handle tax preparation, but so our deadlines are all year round. Every day there's deadlines from the IRS agents that they give to our
Yeah.
employee, to our clients. But what we do feel the deadlines still, because all the tax preparers, all the accountants and the bookkeepers and all these people that do have to keep track of these deadlines, they're the ones that are sending their clients to us. So you mentioned,
Mm.
something important. You said October 15th deadline's coming up. Once that deadline arrives, and even now, we start getting emails and calls from all these tax preparers saying, "Oh, our client owes X amount of dollars. Can you please help them? Can you give some advice? Can you guide them?" And everything. So yeah, those things affect us as well. And yeah, we're always available and accessible. So
Mm.
anyone listening to this, for example, or any taxpayer that needs help, or even a practitioners, can always contact me directly, and say, I need help, or my client needs help. And we're always available, and the help could come in different forms. Rachel, it's not us always representing a taxpayer. BackTaxCentral handles
Yeah.
99% of any IRS issues, but someone who needs representation where we take over the case, that's available as well.
Amazing. So the IRS, not just the IRS this time, even accounting, it comes with a reputation for being stiff and being too serious. How do you challenge that stereotype in your own way?
Yeah, yeah, right. What the funny thing about that is, I haven't really met those stereotypical CPAs or accountants. I've met some,
Mm,
like in more so in the past, I would say. But I think things are changing. I think a lot of these accountants are just more like relaxed in their approach of their practice. I think they have the competence and the know-how. But I think
mm,
is, at least the ones that I've interacted with the most recently, I say the last 1 to 3 years, things have changed, where they're more
mm,
relaxed. They know what they're doing, and they're very good at their niche. and
mm.
and I met quite a bit, because we do what they don't do, and they do what we don't
Mm.
do. So we work very nicely together. We just stick with back taxes. That's all we know, and that's all we do. So I met a lot of them, and they're very, they're very straightforward, and it seems like this new generation is, more transparent. They tell you how it is. If you have some deductions or credits you're entitled to, great. If not, they'll explain why. And I think that's really
Mm.
important, because it really comes down to explanation, which is what I call just education. Even when I was at
Yeah.
the IRS, I got along very well with 99% of the taxpayers. And I think the reason is because I always explain why. We work
Mm.
together as a team to figure out, why do you owe 10,000 to the IRS? Why do you owe $1 million to the IRS? Right? Like, what happened that got you to this point? What is the cause?
Mm.
So I think when you look when
Yeah.
you have kind of a logical approach, um, and I think a lot of customers and clients, no matter what field you're in, I think they're very receptive to that.
Yeah, that's true. And it makes them maybe comfortable in a way to share their pain points or point of view. Yeah, it makes it easier
Yeah,
that
and
way.
and and there are a
But
lot of people, that's a
yeah.
good point, that have very similar pain points. They're, especially when it
Mm-hmm.
comes to taxes. No one likes taxes. No one wants to pay the IRS.
Yeah.
People have a lot of questions, nowadays, of what they're even doing with the money that we pay in. And so
Mm-hmm.
it's a real thing. It's a real thing where a lot of money is being taken from the taxpayers' earnings, all their hard work between January and December. And they just don't fully understand the tax code. And it is very complex, so they have very valid questions. So I think anyone, any professional, either accountant or tax professional, can really
Mm-hmm.
help the taxpayer by just holding their hand and educating them on, why the result on your tax return is what it is. And then the next
Yeah.
step is, what can we do to help that, to improve the position that you're in. Same thing with
Yeah.
back taxes. I mean, it's called back taxes, not future taxes, right? So even the back tax stuff, when we resolve that, that's one thing. Now the second thing we chat with everyone about is, what can we do to take a preventative approach so that you don't owe back taxes again going forward? Because ideally, you're only a client of ours once, right? And we really we,
Once.
we tell them, here's how you only become a client of ours once. We'll help you now, and then also this is
Mm-hmm.
what you need to do going forward, so you don't get bothered by the IRS and the IRS computer.
Yeah, that's amazing. So now bringing this into like stepping out of the work and everything now, what is a day in your life like as the founder of Backtax? What is your day in the life like? Do you have any rituals or habits that sort of keep you grounded?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So I'm a father of two. So my wife and I are always busy with the kids. Both of the kids are under 10. So the day starts out, with the kids, and then,
Mm-hmm.
also ends with the kids, right? Um, so it's busy. I mean, they're older now, so they're 9 and 6, so they could do certain things on their own. But um, that's that whole question of, how do you balance your day,
Mm-hmm.
and your
Yeah.
practice and your businesses when you're a parent? And it is very challenging. It is very challenging, especially when you're focused on being a great parent and you want to give them time and attention and mentor them and coach them.
Yeah.
So they're our number one clients, right? So our job is to take care of
True.
them.
Yeah.
So yeah, I try to find time, just like everybody else, spend time, with family, spending time with, our team, our business team, and on the business with clients. um there's, for me, there's really no routine, I would say. I read all these things about people waking up at 4 and doing a cold plunge, and
Yeah.
then
So,
working on their diary for an hour and other stuff. For me, it's, I have a planner. I have certain things that are planned on the business side, certain things planned on the family side. I try to stick with those things as much as I can, and kind of balance that out. Anytime I can, I try to incorporate the kids into anything that might be working on the business project. That's not customer facing. So they would help
mhm.
with stuffing envelopes, or they would assist with, going over stuff. I asked them. I asked my little ones. I asked them for help. I'm like, all right, I'm creating a new logo for this. Can you sketch it for me, right?
Love
Or
that.
what do you think about
Yeah.
this name versus this name, or this website or that, right? And they chime in. So this is how we're kind of, blending in business stuff and coaching and mentoring with them with family stuff you know and all that family time, because it is hard, at the same time, in the back of your
Mhm,
mind, when you're up till 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning and the kids are going to get up in a couple hours, um, and you're
mhm,
thinking, all right, how am I going to be able to handle when they get home from school, because you're exhausted, your energy is all drained, you got a million
trained,
things to
yeah.
do on the business side, all these IRS deadlines that they gave us, right? Because these are revenue officers
Mhm,
and these are IRS, correspondents that gives you these deadlines. So these are not your normal deadlines. Sometimes you have a 24-hour deadline. And in that 24
wow.
hour, you already have something planned on the family side. So it is really challenging, but knowing, understanding the entrepreneurship, right? Like that road that you're gonna go on when you first start,
Mhm,
you anticipate these things and you just address it as they come, and they come all the time. It's constant, So you just learn to
mhm.
get better at dealing with that as you go on.
Yeah, I love that. Creating a balance, especially keeping them involved, getting them involved in the things that you do. Yeah, that's a big
Yeah,
deal.
it really helps. It helps because kids can't just sit at the desk and learn about entrepreneurship, and in an academic way, So you learn by doing and seeing. So we try to show them as much as possible, about business, investments, assets, right, and in a level that they understand. And when you start doing that,
Mhm.
you start realizing, wow, that they actually learn a lot. They could absorb and they could
Yeah.
comprehend a lot, and that becomes their baseline. So now we have a generation that's coming up whose their baseline is
Mhm.
hard work, diligence, integrity, being honest, work ethic, all those principles that are important to success in the personal side and the business side.
Yeah, amazing. So now let's take this back to your clients now. I mean, you deal and connect with clients from all walks of life. And how do you connect with them, knowing fully well that finances, money can be a vulnerable and emotional topic, especially when it comes to their taxes, maybe they are owing taxes. How do you connect and deal with different clients like that?
Yeah, the we do have different clients below. We even have Americans that have back taxes, but they live overseas, which is always very interesting.
Okay.
Depending on like where they're living, all sorts of different places, which is very very interesting. So how we connect is, I mean, I think a few different ways. Number one is money is a global language. So
Mm-hmm.
so they understand, they really understand kind of that part of it, that they owe a lot of money to the IRS, and that definition of a lot could be, different dollar amounts. But they understand that, right? They also understand that the consequences of what's happening. So they, a lot of these taxpayers end up with their business, being at risk because their business owes back taxes and personally they owe back taxes. Many times, Rachel, they're going through personal hardships at the same time, and so the taxes are affecting their personal side and vice versa. So there's real implications of owing back taxes to the IRS. And I think being empathetic is very important in terms of that connection that you
Yeah.
mentioned, and understanding that. And it's been over 20 years dealing with back taxes for me, so you kind of see a lot of the same patterns. But at the same time, every single taxpayer you talk to is going through their own struggle, and they're really
Yeah.
suffering financially. Um, but more so, I would say, emotionally, they're struggling. On the personal side, they're struggling with their marriage. They're struggling as a result of the back taxes. Many times, these people
Mm-hmm.
have, serious health issues they're going through. Either for themselves or their young children or the elderly parents, or sometimes both now, and so they're going through a lot of stuff on the personal side. So you end up wearing a lot of hats. Sometimes you're definitely the tax professional, right? The back tax expert, but then you're also like the therapist. You're sometimes helping them with their having discussions, with their businesses. Some of these people have, their accounts receivables, but they're not collecting. So you end up talking
Mm,
about collections, for their own business, which will help resolve their IRS case. A lot of things are tied into the IRS case. We're talking with their accountants, with their tax preparers, with their attorneys. Sometimes they're in
mm-hmm.
bankruptcy, or they just got out of bankruptcy, or they're going through some, personal issues, and they have other attorneys that are part of their team. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so people from all walks of life, right? But what it boils down to is really, just breaking things down to where they could really comprehend what their options are, and do it in a way that's they can understand, not overwhelming them with all the stuff that's not applicable. We just break it down to the meat and potatoes of what's applicable to their specific case.
Exactly. Just give it to me as simple
Yeah,
as it can be. Yeah, yeah. So you founded BackTax Central, right? To help people resolve maybe issues with IRS, their taxes and stuff like that. But beyond the services that you offer, what do you want your clients to feel when they work with you?
yeah. So when they're working with us in BackTax Central, what do we want them to feel? And they're going to feel like they're in a place that's a safe place for back taxes.
Mm,
Number one, and that's a little bit unique to say, because when it comes to back taxes, there's a lot of these so-called tax relief companies. Um, so they're
mm,
not professional tax firms, but they're tax relief companies that advertise a lot. And a lot of these taxpayers end up getting trapped with these advertisers, and these
mm,
advertisers talk about, if you owe back taxes, come to us and we're going to reduce your tax debt for pennies on a dollar.
mm,
If you owe back taxes, you never have to pay it. Just, do some secret, fancy procedure, and we're going to make your taxes go away, right? So a lot of taxpayers end up getting victimized by these so-called tax relief companies.
mm,
And so the whole premise of Back Tax Central is a safe place where all taxpayers across the country can go, and where these tax professionals and accountants and tax preparers can send their clients, knowing that they can get straight information on exactly what to do. First, you do this, then you do this, then you do this, right? And as long as you
mm,
know what to do and how to do it, anyone can do it. There's not, Michael
mm,
doesn't need to be submitting the information on your behalf. You could submit the same information on your own behalf, and you don't have to worry about trying to pay thousands of dollars in professional fees. So that's what Back Tax
mm,
Central is. It's a safe place where people could understand how to resolve their back tax, and the masses should be using that, because only about maybe 1% of people really need someone like me to come on,
mm.
hold their hand, and resolve the case with them.
Amazing. So, what do you think? Maybe in your conversation with clients, I mean, you just mentioned the tax relief company that is always advertising to people to maybe get a discount or something on their taxes. What other misconception about taxes have you seen or heard that makes you shake your head? And how do you flip that
Yeah,
narrative?
there's a lot. There's a lot, especially that we have to be scared of the IRS. So
Mm,
that's a big one. I mean, the reality is that the IRS has no idea who these taxpayers really are. They know that there's about
mm,
20 million of taxpayers who owe back taxes in their inventory. But if I call the IRS and I'm representing Rachel and she owes $1,000, they're going to say, okay, what's her name and social, and I'll look it up. And if I call the IRS and I say I'm representing Michael who owes $1 million, they still don't even know who the $1 million one is either. They just say, what's his full name and
mm,
social, and I'll look it up. So the reality is that the IRS is not watching the taxpayers, and the owing the back tax is not that big of a deal. What is a big
mhm,
deal is that you take action to resolve the case, and resolving it doesn't mean full paying. You can if you're able to, but 99% of taxpayers cannot full pay the back tax, and that's perfectly fine. You have other options that the IRS has made available. So make sure that taxpayers just needs to understand that you don't need to be scared of the IRS. They have procedures, and they have options of what to do
Mm-hmm.
if you can't full pay. So all you do is put in place a resolution of some sort.
I love how direct and clear that is. Wow. Thank you so much, Michael. This conversation has been an amazing one. And maybe for me, clarity in terms of, because I see a lot of IRS conversation going on in the accounting community, tax Twitter community, especially in moments like this where deadlines are like coming so close. They're dealing with clients, dealing with documents. So this has provided like um some sort of clarity, basically. So I still have like a couple of questions to ask, and one of them is now for people in the accounting industry, right? For young and aspiring accountants or people who want to get into this field of work that you are in right now, and they feel like, I don't think I can do this. I don't think I'm cut out for this. What would you tell them? What advice would you give them?
That's a really, really good question. If they have a passion for that type of work and they're interested in that, I would
Mm-hmm.
definitely advise them to take some time to think about, you know, what are their ultimate goals. So
Mm.
a lot of people want to prepare tax returns or do accounting or bookkeeping or tax planning, and all of those things are
Mm-hmm.
very important. People need that and will continue to need that. um, they have to, these individuals have to really think about, okay, how am I going to make money and survive doing this particular activity, right?
Mm-hmm.
And maybe have, a focus on, if I take option one, what is my end goal financially? If I have option two,
Yeah.
what's going to happen financially, right? So, for example, there are a lot of
Mhm.
people now that are mixing in accounting or planning and preparation with technology. So if they're going to marry the two, right, their practice and their services with technology, that might be able to reach their financial goals either quicker or at the same time, right? Where maybe people are just doing the service and not mixing in the technology. So, efficiency is important. Being able to, help the masses might be one avenue. So
Yeah.
that like BackTax Central is for the masses, where people can have access to expert help at a,
Mm-hmm.
at a very affordable way. Where they couldn't in the past, so that's for the masses. So I would tell these people, take some time, actually brainstorm, what do you want. Maybe they're going to have a niche where they're only doing very high end planning or preparation, or they're going to
Mm-hmm.
be doing something at BackTax Central where it's more for the masses, at an affordable entry level price, and now you're helping more people. But it's always twofold, because the reality is we live on an economic planet. um, so even
Yeah.
though you might have a passion in something, that's great, and helping people is extremely important, and people need it and want it. So the more people you could help, the more money you make. But you really have to think about the second thing simultaneously: is
Yeah.
how am I going to end up financially from taking one avenue versus the other? And I think, especially with AI and everything nowadays, people could really brainstorm and come up with a way to merge the two. And I think
True.
we're going to be seeing in the, accounting area, tax, and all the adjacent fields, is that you're going to have a lot more successful practitioners. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that's going to be good. Obviously, for them, it's going to be good for their customers. Going to be good for everyone around, that they have, have expert guidance, but in an accessible way, which is really
Mm-hmm.
the best place to be, where people are getting, expert guidance, but it's not breaking the bank. And once you
Mm-hmm.
have that, and and that's what we achieve at Backtax Central. Once you have that, now you have a win-win-win for everyone. And it's a
Everyone.
really, really great place to be, because then you're really proud of what you created. You're proud because you're helping the customers. They don't no longer have to be stressed and have uncertainty, and don't have to end up with maybe some of these
Mm-hmm.
companies that, won't take care of them. So brainstorm and then take action 24/7. And knowing, if you choose to go down this route, that entrepreneurship is 24/7. Um, you
It
know,
is.
uh, depending on your goals, I would say. I'll put that caveat in there.
That's valid. That's valid. It's 24/7. Think about it before you get into it. I love that. So now to my last question before the rapid fire question. Yes, I have like some very interesting rapid fire questions. Through your work, the work that you do, your story and how you've chosen to like show up in this profession, what's at the end of the day, what kind of legacy are you hoping to leave at the end of the day?
Yeah. Um, yeah. So that's a very, very good question. Um, so what kind of legacy? So when I was at the IRS, I saw suffering and struggling. Okay, I saw a lot of
Mm,
misconceptions of the IRS as well, which hurt the taxpayer the most because the taxpayer thought things are very complicated and I'm going to lose my house. The IRS is going to take my house. They're going to take my bank accounts. They're going to take my business. I even had a lady tell me
mm,
she thought that we were going to take her kids. She told me, she said, please don't take my
mm,
kids while she was in my IRS office at the time. And so all of those things were lessons that I learned where the United States, right, taxpayers really don't understand what, they're supposed to be doing with back taxes. And they had a lot of misconceptions that really stressed them out. And then in private practice for the last 13 years, I got the same sentiment
mm.
where, the taxpayers were referred to us or they find us and they're stressed out. They don't, they're intimidated with the IRS. They don't know
Yeah.
what to do. So there's all this uncertainty. So my number one goal this whole time that I've been in private practice was to create something where the taxpayers get guidance from one source. It's an expert source, okay, and everything is explained in very simple layman's terms. And that's exactly what I created with BackTax Central. So BackTax Central, in terms of legacy, is the number one place that every single taxpayer that owes back taxes should be using. And they should be going there and getting the information they need. It'll walk them through what to do, and they never have to pay thousands of dollars to anyone to help them ever again. No taxpayer ever has to become victimized ever again by any of these so-called tax relief companies, and they no longer need to be intimidated by the IRS, because BackTax Central explains exactly what you need to do. It provides you the forms and all the documents and everything that you need. So I would say that is actually, my end goal is, creating this platform where people can use. And I was telling someone the other day, I'm like, all right, once I'm done, building out these other bells and whistles with BackTax Central and everything's, smooth sailing from that side of things, I will be exiting the tax world. Why? Because I created something where the taxpayers can use, like where they could go forever now and be safe, not have to worry about spending thousands of dollars and all those things I mentioned. So that is created. And I spent a lot of time and a lot of resources creating that for the taxpayer. And all of this stemmed from the feedback from the taxpayers when I was at the IRS. So I'm really grateful and appreciative of that experience because it really opened up my eyes that millions and millions every year have the same issue and they don't know where to turn to, and they end up finding places that are not helpful to them, that are actually detrimental. So that's going to be the last thing I'll leave for taxpayers, so they actually have a safe place to go forever, as long as we have taxes. Maybe we all
Yes.
get lucky sometime in the future, Rachel, and there are no more taxes. At that point, I'll happily shut down back tax central.
I don't see that happening in like
I
10
don't know.
years,
I
10,
don't know.
15
We'll see. Maybe we have to do a follow up, you and I, and
maybe.
then together I'll hit the
For
button and
sure.
we'll shut down back tax central and we'll all celebrate.
For sure. Oh my God. Amazing. Thank you so much, Michael. So now to the rapid fire questions. You have 5 seconds to, no, less than 5 seconds to think about the answers to this question. So are you
I'm
ready for
ready.
this?
Let's do it.
Okay. What is the first thing you'd buy if you won the lottery?
Investments.
I love that. Okay. Email or Slack? Which one is
Which one
worse?
is worse?
Yes.
Slack, I would say,
Why? Why
because
Slack?
you're
I
you're
actually
constantly
like.
getting pinged. You know. Yep. Email sits in there, and you get to it when you get to it.
Okay, fair enough. Early bird or night
Night
owl?
owl. I was just born that way.
Oh. What's your go-to work snack?
Work snack?
Yes.
Beef sticks. Protein beef sticks. Yeah.
Ooh, love it, love it. If you could automate one part of your job, what would it be?
If I could automate one part of my job, what would it be? I automated 99.9% of my job and shoved it into Backtax Central. That's exactly what that is. Yeah.
Love that. Love that. Coffee or tea?
Water. I
Oh,
don't drink the
okay.
other ones. Sometimes I drink tea in the wintertime when I'm cold
Mhm.
and I got to warm up the insides. Otherwise,
Okay.
constantly drinking water.
Love that. Love that. And the last one, if you had to be stuck in an elevator with a fictional character, who would you pick?
Wait, so can you repeat that?
If you were stuck in the elevator with a fictional character, who would you pick?
Who would it be if I was stuck in an
Yes.
elevator with a fictional character? Who would it be? A fictional character? That's a really good question. I might need more than 5 seconds for that one. Who would it be? I think I would probably have to say one of the superheroes right now, either Batman or Superman, and we would probably devise a plan, Rachel, and that plan, if carried out, would probably solve a lot of problems. Yeah.
Problems. Fair enough. Oh my, this has been an incredible chat, Michael. Thank you so much for sharing what you do, the behind the scenes of what you do, and how you create an incredible solution for people through BackTax Central. Thank you for having this conversation with me
Yeah.
today.
Well, I appreciate
Thank
you
you.
inviting me on. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. So, if you want to reach out to you, where can they
Yeah,
contact you?
so people can reach out to me directly at michael at backtaxcentral.com. And anyone who wants to, help with back taxes or their clients or the taxpayer themselves could also go to backtaxcentral.com itself.
Okay, amazing. Thank
Yeah,
you so
thank you, Rachel.
much.
Take care.
Yeah, yeah.